The grand halls of the Zareth Palace were filled with shining lights, banners of gold and red, and the murmurs of nobles who had come from across the empire. The air was heavy with incense, and alien musicians played slow, haunting notes on instruments that looked like shimmering crystals. It was supposed to be a day of triumph, a day when peace between two powerful civilizations would be sealed. Yet for Princess Serenia of the Zareth Empire, the day felt less like triumph and more like surrender. She stood at the center of the hall, tall and radiant, her long silver hair braided with jewels that sparkled like stars. Her skin, pale with a faint blue glow, marked her royal bloodline. Her golden eyes were sharp and proud, the eyes of a warrior princess raised among a people who lived and died by honor in battle. Yet even with her proud stance, there was bitterness in her heart. Today she was being bound not to a warrior of her empire, but to a man from Earth, a human. Her gaze fell on him as he entered the hall. Captain Elias Ward, the man who would become her husband. He did not shine the way her people did. His hair was dark and plain, his eyes an ordinary shade of brown. His skin bore the warm hue of the sun, but without the faint glow of her kind. He walked without arrogance, without the proud lift of the chin that every Zareth noble carried. Instead, he walked simply, his steps quiet, his face calm, as though none of this grandeur mattered to him. Serenia felt her jaw tighten. She had expected more. A man meant to stand as the bridge between their species should have at least tried to look worthy. But Elias wore no ornate armor, no grand cloak. He wore only a clean, well-fitted uniform of Earth's space fleet, simple and unadorned. His sword, the weapon that symbolized his right to stand at her side, was not even of alien design. It was a human blade, steel forged by hand, carried in a plain sheath at his side. To her people it looked primitive. To Serenia it looked pitiful. The ceremony began. The high priest of the Zareth intoned the ancient vows, his voice echoing like thunder in the vast chamber. The nobles watched closely, their whispers barely hidden. Serenia could feel their eyes on her, judging, mocking. She knew what they were thinking. The princess marries a human? A soft creature of Earth? What honor is there in this? It was not her choice. The council had decided it. The Zareth Empire was weary of war. Earth had risen quickly in the stars, their fleet small but growing, their technology strange and adaptable. A war between them would be costly, so a treaty had been made, and the treaty demanded marriage. She was the only daughter of the Emperor. Elias was the chosen representative of Earth. It was done. When the vows were spoken, Elias repeated them without hesitation, his voice steady. He looked at her with calm eyes, not filled with desire, not filled with pride, just calm. Serenia's lips tightened as she repeated her vows in turn. The bond was sealed. The high priest declared them husband and wife. The crowd clapped politely, though the whispers continued. Later in the feast that followed, Serenia sat beside Elias at the high table. Alien delicacies were served, spiced meats from the deserts of Zareth, glowing fruits from the moons, drinks that shimmered like liquid fire. Elias ate quietly, tasting but not boasting, speaking only when spoken to. The nobles tested him with questions, mocking in tone. Tell us, human captain, do you even know how to wield that blade you carry? Or is it only decoration? Elias did not rise to the insult. He simply smiled faintly and replied, A blade is for use when needed. Not for show, the nobles laughed. Serenia's cheeks burned. She wanted to snap at them, to silence them, but she did not. It was not her place now. She glanced at Elias, wondering if he even understood the shame he brought upon her by being so ordinary. That night, when they were alone in the private chambers prepared for them, the silence between them felt heavy. The room was decorated with silken curtains, golden lamps, and a wide bed draped in crimson. Yet it felt like a cage. Serenia turned to him, her voice sharp. Do you even understand what this marriage means? To my people, you are nothing but a token, a man placed at my side to make Earth feel equal. They will never respect you. Elias looked at her calmly. His expression did not change. I didn't come here to be respected, princess. I came because peace is worth more than pride. His words startled her. Peace worth more than pride? To a Zareth, pride was everything. To live without it was worse than death. She turned away, refusing to speak more. She thought to herself, this man will never understand. He is simple, soft. He will never be one of us. Days turned to weeks. Life in the palace was filled with ceremonies, meetings, and endless whispers. Elias remained the same, calm, quiet. He walked with her through the gardens, dined with her at the feasts, sat beside her during council meetings. He never boasted, never raised his voice, never demanded. He listened more than he spoke, and when he did speak, his words were plain. The nobles mocked him behind his back, calling him the quiet human. Even the servants giggled, whispering that their princess had been chained to a man of no strength. Serenia tried to ignore him. She trained daily with her guards, practicing with blades, with plasma spears, with the art of war. Elias never joined her, never watched. He spent his time reading, writing, walking alone in the courtyards. Sometimes she caught him polishing his old human blade, the one weapon he seemed to care for. She shook her head whenever she saw it. That weapon was no match for alien steel. Yet despite her scorn, there were small things that unsettled her. When he spoke to the servants, they listened. Not out of fear, but out of respect. When he walked among the guards, their laughter always softened. And when he looked at her, really looked, she sometimes felt as though he was measuring her soul, not her strength. It unsettled her. She told herself it was nothing. Then came the whispers. Dark rumors carried by merchants from the border. An old enemy of the Zareth Empire, the Scar Dominion, had sent assassins. Their goal was simple: kill the princess, break the treaty, and ignite war before peace could take root. The council dismissed the rumors as fear-mongering. Serenia dismissed them too. The palace was secure. Her guards were the finest. No assassin could pass the shields and patrols. Besides, if danger did come, she was a warrior herself. She would fight. As for Elias, she smirked at the thought. What could her quiet husband do? He would hide or perhaps run. That was the way of simple men. On the night of the next feast, as the moonlight poured through the palace windows and the air was filled with music, the first scream tore through the halls. The assassins had come. The scream echoed through the marble halls of the palace like a crack of thunder. At first, Serenia thought it was nothing more than a servant clumsy with a tray, or perhaps a drunken noble making a fool of himself. But then came the second scream. Sharper, choked, followed by the unmistakable clash of steel against steel. Her golden eyes snapped toward the door. Guards were already moving, their armor glinting under the torchlight. The music of the feast faltered. Guests rose from their seats, whispering nervously. And in the middle of it all sat Elias, calm as ever, his hands folded before him on the table as if the chaos outside meant nothing. Serenia's instincts took over. She rose quickly, her ceremonial blade in hand. "Assassins," she hissed. "The Scar!" The doors burst open. Figures cloaked in shadow slipped into the hall, their movements fast, silent, deadly. Their armor was black, their weapons curved and strange, blades that shimmered with poison. One guard fell instantly, his throat cut before he could even cry out. Another staggered as a dagger sank into his chest. Panic spread among the nobles. Serenia leapt forward, her warrior training guiding her. She blocked a strike, spun, and slashed her attacker down. Her guards rushed to form a line before her, their voices raised in war cries. But for every assassin killed, 2 more slipped into the hall. The palace shields had failed. Someone had betrayed them, and still Elias did not move. Serenia's fury burned. Was this it? The moment when her so-called husband showed his true self, a coward, a soft man unfit for her side. She wanted to shout at him, to demand he fight, but she had no time. Another assassin lunged. She parried, sparks flying. Then at last Elias rose. It was not hurried, not frantic. He stood slowly, his chair sliding back across the floor. His calm gaze swept the chaos, and for the first time Serenia felt a strange chill. His eyes were not ordinary. They were sharp, focused, cold. One assassin noticed him and laughed, a cruel, mocking sound. "The human," the alien sneered. "He dies first." The assassin lunged. Elias's hand moved to his side, drawing the simple blade Serenia had always mocked. It gleamed in the torchlight, plain steel, no energy hum, no plasma edge, just a blade. Yet when Elias raised it, he moved with a speed that no ordinary man should have had. The assassin struck. Elias sidestepped with fluid grace, his sword flashing once. The assassin froze, eyes wide before collapsing to the floor, throat cut cleanly. The hall seemed to pause. Serenia's own blade wavered as she stared. Elias did not hesitate, did not stumble, did not even breathe heavily. He had killed as easily as a man brushing aside a branch. Another assassin came for him. Elias pivoted, his blade striking twice in quick, sharp arcs. The alien fell in pieces. A third attacker rushed him, shouting a war cry. Elias ducked low, driving his sword upward into the assassin's chest, then twisted free in a single smooth motion. Sirenia could not believe her eyes. Her husband, her quiet, simple husband, was moving like one of her empire's greatest champions. No wasted steps, no needless flourishes. Every strike was precise. Every motion meant to kill. Her guards noticed too. For a moment their cries grew louder, their spirits lifting. The nobles who had once mocked Elias now watched with stunned silence. Sirenia fought at his side, her blade clashing with another assassin's. She risked a glance toward Elias. He was covered in blood, yet not his own. His expression remained calm, cold, focused. He moved like a man who had fought 100 battles before. "Who are you?" she whispered under her breath even as she cut her foe down. The assassins pressed harder. One leapt from the balcony above, daggers ready to sink into Sirenia's back. Before she could react, Elias was there. His blade struck upward, skewering the attacker in midair. He yanked the weapon free and shoved the body aside, his eyes never leaving the battlefield. When the last assassin fell, silence returned to the hall. The floor was slick with blood. Broken bodies lay among shattered tables and spilled goblets. The nobles stared, pale and trembling. The guards, though battered, stood firm. And at the center of it all stood Elias, his sword dripping red, his face expressionless. He bent down, wiping the blade clean on a fallen cloak. Only then did he return it to its sheath. Sirenia could not speak. Her chest heaved with breath, her mind spinning. She looked at him, searching for some sign of weakness, of fear, of anything that proved he was still the same quiet man she thought he was. But he only looked back at her with those calm brown eyes, as though this night had been nothing more than a simple duty. The nobles began whispering again, but now their voices were different. No longer mocking, no longer filled with scorn. They whispered in awe. In fear, one guard bowed his head. "The human, he fights like a ghost," another nodded. "Like a man who has seen too many wars." Sirenia stepped toward Elias, her voice sharp but trembling. "You, where did you learn this? What are you hiding from me?" Elias met her gaze, his expression unreadable. "Not every war is written in your history books." "Princess," that was all he said. He turned away, walking calmly from the hall as though nothing had happened. Leaving the nobles and guards staring after him, Sirenia's heart pounded. For the first time in her life, she felt not pride, not scorn, but something else. A strange mix of fear and curiosity. Who was Elias Ward, truly? The next day, the palace was tense. Servants cleaned the blood from the marble floors. Guards doubled their patrols. The council raged in their chambers, demanding answers. How had assassins breached the shields? Who had betrayed them? And what of the human? Sirenia heard their words as she sat in silence, her thoughts elsewhere. She could not forget the way Elias had moved, the way he had fought. She remembered every motion, every strike. It had not been the wild fury of an untrained man. It had been the deadly calm of a veteran, one who had killed too many times to count. When she finally sought him out, she found him in the gardens, alone, sitting beneath the silver-leafed trees, his sword resting across his knees. He was cleaning it again, methodically, carefully, as though each stroke of the cloth carried meaning. "You should have told me," she said softly, though her voice still carried steel. Elias did not look up. "Told you what?" "That you were a warrior, that you had killed before, that you were not simple." He finally raised his eyes to her. Would it have mattered? Her lips parted, but she found no answer. The silence stretched. She wanted to demand the truth from him, to tear away the calm mask he wore. But when she looked into his eyes, she saw something she had not expected. Not pride, not arrogance, not even victory. She saw weariness, a heaviness that spoke of battles fought long before they had ever met. She turned away, her heart unsettled. She had thought him simple, but now she was no longer sure. The palace of Zareth had survived the night of assassins, but peace did not return. Whispers spread through every hall, carried by servants and nobles alike. They did not speak only of the Scar attackers. They spoke of the human. The princess's husband fights like a warrior. No, like a killer. Where did he learn such skill? Humans are not trained as we are. Perhaps he is not what he seems. The words reached every ear, from the lowest kitchen servant to the highest member of the council. Even the emperor himself had asked questions, though Elias had answered none. He remained the same as always, calm, quiet, never raising his voice. But now when he walked the palace halls, the whispers followed him. Some were filled with respect, others with fear. Princess Serenia felt the whispers too. She could not forget that night. The way he had moved, the way he had killed without hesitation. She had once thought him simple, a soft man forced into a political marriage. Now she knew there was more, much more, and that thought troubled her. The council called for a trial, not of punishment but of proof. The nobles demanded to see if the human truly had the strength to stand beside their princess. They argued that the treaty was weak if the husband of the heir could not defend himself before the empire. Serenia herself, torn between pride and doubt, supported the trial. She needed answers as much as anyone else. The trial of combat was ancient. It was not a fight to the death but a test of strength, skill, and honor. Elias was summoned to the arena within the palace grounds, a vast circle of stone surrounded by rows of seats. Hundreds of nobles gathered to watch, their voices buzzing with excitement and disbelief. Serenia sat in the high seat, her golden eyes fixed on the sandy floor below. She wore her ceremonial armor, though she was not the one who would fight. Still, she could not help the tension that gripped her chest. Elias stepped into the arena. He wore no armor, only his earth uniform, simple and plain. His sword, the same human blade he always carried, hung at his side. The crowd murmured. Some laughed. Look at him. No armor. Does he wish to die? Perhaps humans do not understand combat at all. The announcer's voice boomed. The trial will be 3 battles. Captain Elias, Ward of Earth, will face 3 warriors of the Zareth Empire, one after another. If he proves himself, he shall be recognized as worthy. If he fails... The announcer did not finish. He did not need to. Failure would mean shame, perhaps even exile. The first warrior entered the arena. A young champion, tall and strong, carrying a spear of plasma steel. He bowed to the nobles, then turned with a grin toward Elias. This will be quick. The horn sounded. The warrior lunged, his spear crackling with light. Elias did not flinch. He stepped aside with smooth precision, letting the spear pass him by, then struck once. His blade cut the spear's shaft cleanly in 2. Before the warrior could recover, Elias struck again, the tip of his sword stopping just short of the champion's throat. Gasps filled the arena. The match was over in seconds. The second warrior entered, older, experienced, carrying twin curved blades. He circled Elias like a predator, his steps quick and light. Elias stood still, his sword lowered, his eyes calm. The warrior struck, blades flashing. Elias blocked one, dodged the other, his movements efficient. The fight lasted longer this time. Sparks flew. The crowd cheered. But slowly Elias's control became clear. Every strike he made pushed the warrior back. Every block left the warrior more desperate. Finally, Elias disarmed him with a twist, sending one blade clattering across the arena. The other he knocked aside before placing his sword at the man's chest. Yield, Elias said softly. The warrior dropped his blade. The crowd erupted in shouts of disbelief. 2 victories. The third warrior entered last. He was no ordinary soldier. He was Commander Vaynar, one of the Emperor's own guard, a veteran of a dozen wars. His armor was dark red, his weapon a great halberd that hummed with deadly power. He looked at Elias with no smile, no mockery, only seriousness. The horn sounded. This time Elias moved first. He rushed forward, blade flashing. Vaynar blocked with the halberd, the impact sending a crack through the air. They clashed again and again, steel against alien metal, human strength against alien might. The fight raged across the arena, dust rising beneath their feet. Serenia leaned forward in her seat, her hands gripping the edge. Her heart pounded with every strike. Elias moved with deadly precision, but Vaynar was no fool. He countered with skill, his weapon sweeping with terrifying power. Once he struck Elias's shoulder, tearing his uniform and drawing blood. The crowd roared, but Elias did not falter. His eyes burned with quiet focus. He pressed on, his blade striking again and again, faster, sharper. At last he slipped past the halberd's guard, his sword tip resting at Vaynar's throat. Silence filled the arena. Then, slowly, Vaynar lowered his weapon. He knelt. The crowd exploded in shock. Nobles who had mocked Elias now shouted his name. Some still stared in disbelief, unable to accept what they had seen. Serenia rose to her feet, her chest tight. She had demanded proof, and now she had it. Her husband was no ordinary man. When Elias left the arena, blood on his shoulder but calm as ever, he looked up toward her seat. Their eyes met. For the first time, Serenia felt something shift inside her. Admiration. And something deeper, though she would not name it. That night, she found him in their chambers, tending his wound. She stood at the doorway for a long time before speaking. "You are not simple," she said quietly. Elias looked up, his expression unreadable. "I never claimed to be." She stepped closer. "Tell me, and who are you? Where did you learn to fight like that?" He was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice low. "On Earth, wars are not always fought in the open. There are battles you will never read about in your records, conflicts no one wants remembered. I fought in them. I led men in them. I survived them. That is all you need to know." Serenia's eyes softened. She could see the weight in his gaze, the shadows of old battles. He was not boasting. He was remembering. And she realized then that his calm, his quiet, his patience, all of it came from scars she could not see. Before she could answer, a messenger burst into the room, breathless and pale. "Princess, Captain, scouts have returned from the border. The Scar Dominion. Their fleet is moving. War is coming." The words froze the air. Serenia looked at Elias, her heart pounding. For the first time she felt fear, not for herself but for her people. The Zareth Empire had never seen its people so unsettled. The Scar Dominion fleet hovered in the void beyond the capital's orbit, massive ships bristling with weapons that glowed like molten stars. Panic whispered through the halls of the palace. Generals argued, nobles shouted, and even the emperor, usually calm as ice, found himself pacing in circles. Princess Serenia stood at the balcony overlooking the docking bays, her golden eyes fixed on the approaching enemy. She had watched them with fear before, but now her gaze found Elias beside her, calm, composed, his sword at his side. The same human who had survived the trial, defeated the assassins, and now stood poised as if nothing could touch him. "Captain," she said, her voice sharp but laced with tension. "The council wants you removed from command. They say your strategies are untested, that humans cannot lead a war against the Scar." Elias turned to her, expression unreadable. "And if we wait for their approval, Princess, how many will die? You trust your council more than your own husband?" Her jaw tightened. She wanted to argue, but she could not. He was right. Their fleet was scattered, unprepared, and the enemy would strike soon. She had seen how he moved in battle. She knew now that calling him simple had been a terrible mistake. "Then show them," she said quietly. "Show them why you are here." Elias nodded once. Simple. Firm. And then he moved to the command chamber. The chamber was vast, filled with glowing maps and holographic projections of the Scar fleet. Generals crowded around, arguing over the best approach. Some wanted to meet the enemy head-on in space. Others suggested retreating behind the planet's orbital defenses. Elias ignored the arguing. He walked to the center of the room, hands clasped behind his back, and surveyed the maps. He moved the holographic ships in a way the Zareth generals had never considered, sliding smaller ships into hidden positions, keeping supply vessels away from the main fleet, and preparing ambush points in asteroid fields. "This is human strategy," he said finally, his voice calm but commanding. "We do not meet them where they expect us. We use deception, terrain, and patience. We hit their weak points, not their strength. We make every loss costly for them." The general scoffed. "Deception? Humans rely on tricks? Our warriors fight with honor, not games." Elias's gaze did not waver. "Honor means nothing if your empire falls." Princess Serenia stepped forward. "Listen to him," she said. "I trust him." For the first time, the generals fell silent. The first battle came sooner than anyone expected. The Scar fleet advanced aggressively, expecting to crush the Zareth ships quickly. But Elias had predicted their moves. Hidden among asteroid belts, smaller Zareth ships emerged from shadows, attacking supply vessels, creating chaos. The Scar were thrown off balance. Serenia watched from the command tower on the planet's surface. Explosions lit the sky and the enemy ships faltered. She could hear the council muttering, astonished that a human could outthink their most experienced commanders. Elias's orders were precise. He divided the fleet into small groups, each with a clear mission: draw the enemy into traps, force them into narrow asteroid fields, and isolate their largest ships. He coordinated attacks with perfect timing. Even the Zareth warriors, trained for decades in space combat, struggled to match his planning. By the end of the first day, The Scar had lost more ships than expected. The Zareth fleet had suffered some damage, but nothing catastrophic. The enemy withdrew, confused and humiliated. In the aftermath, Serenia approached Elias in the command chamber. The room smelled of smoke and scorched metal. She saw him marking movements on the holographic map, noting positions, planning the next engagement. "You didn't fight like a Zareth," she said softly. "You think differently. Your strategy, it's unlike anything I've seen." Elias glanced at her, calm as ever. "Earth taught me to survive. To win, you don't always charge forward. You observe, adapt, and strike when the moment is right. That is how humans fight. That is how we win." Her heart raced. She had been proud of her own people, proud of her strength. Yet here was a man, not even her own kind, showing courage, wisdom, and understanding that surpassed her expectations. She felt a mix of admiration and something more, a spark she could not ignore. Days passed and the war escalated. The Scar Dominion sent wave after wave of ships, confident they could overwhelm the Zareth defenses. Each time Elias adapted. Each time he forced them into mistakes. He never relied on brute force, never sought glory, and yet he achieved victory after victory. The alien generals began to change. Their initial skepticism faded. They began to follow his orders without question. They realized that his calm approach and human tactics made them stronger. Ambushes, feints, psychological traps, things that would have been considered dishonorable in Zareth tradition now saved lives and won battles. The princess fought beside him whenever possible, observing his movements, listening to his commands. She could see the difference between her people's pride-driven strategy and the human way. Pride could be deadly, adaptability was survival, and humans had survived for thousands of years despite every disadvantage. One night, as they walked the palace gardens, the air cool and the stars above glittering, Serenia spoke. "I underestimated you," she admitted, her voice low. "I thought you were simple, but I see now. You are not." Elias glanced at her, a small, almost imperceptible smile on his lips. "I never claimed to be simple, I just chose not to reveal everything at once." "You hid your strength from me," she said. "Was it to test me?" "No," he replied quietly. "I wanted you to see me for who I am, not who you expect me to be. And I wanted to survive long enough to protect you and your empire." She looked at him, her golden eyes wide. She realized something profound. This human, who she had once thought weak, had already proven himself stronger than any warrior she had known, not just in skill, but in mind and spirit. The Scar fleet returned, larger and more aggressive than before. Elias called a council meeting. He placed the fleet on the holographic map, pointing to weak points, noting where the enemy would predictably strike. "We cannot meet them in the open," he said. "We will use the terrain to our advantage. Smaller ships will draw their attention. Heavy ships will be hidden. When they strike, we strike harder. Patience is our weapon." The generals exchanged glances. For the first time, they did not argue. They trusted him. The next battle was fierce. Scar ships moved quickly, confident that their numbers would overwhelm the Zareth. Yet Elias's plan unfolded perfectly. Small Zareth vessels struck suddenly from asteroid shadows, pulling enemy ships into tight spaces where their large weapons were ineffective. Human-style ambushes and counterattacks left the Scar disoriented. Serenia watched as Elias moved through the command chamber, issuing calm, precise orders. He was everywhere at once, yet focused. She could see why humans survived wars so long on Earth. They relied on cunning, flexibility, and mental endurance, not just raw strength. By the battle's end, the Zareth fleet had won again, inflicting heavy losses on the enemy. For the first time, the Scar Dominion commander hesitated. The Zareth had been predictable in the past, but now, with the human leading, they were clever, adaptive, and deadly. That night in the palace, Serenia approached Elias again. He was polishing his sword, his face calm as always. Blood from the battlefield still stained his uniform. "You fight not for glory," she said softly. "You fight to survive, to protect. That is why you win." Elias looked at her, eyes steady. "And you? Will you fight beside me when it matters?" She nodded, her heart strong. "Always." He smiled faintly, but it was not pride. It was acknowledgement, respect. And in that moment she understood fully. Her husband, the human she had once thought simple, was not just a warrior. He was a leader, a protector, a force that could turn the tide of a war against impossible odds. The Scar fleet remained, waiting, watching. But the Zareth Empire was no longer afraid. Not with Elias Ward at their side. The night sky above the Zareth capital was alive with fire. Scar warships blotted out the stars, their weapons glowing with deadly energy. The Zareth fleet braced for the assault. Shields charged, cannons ready. The entire empire seemed to hold its breath, knowing that this battle could decide the fate of countless worlds. Princess Serenia stood at the front of the command chamber, watching Elias move among the generals and officers. His calm presence brought focus to the chaos. He spoke in measured tones, issuing orders, adjusting positions, predicting enemy moves. No human or alien had ever commanded a battlefield with such precision. "This is it," she whispered to herself. "This is where he will prove everything." The enemy fleet moved forward, confident, massive, and merciless. The Scar commander, a towering figure clad in black alloy armor, glared at the Zareth forces. His words carried through the void via communication channels. "Princess Serenia of Zareth, your human champion cannot save you. Kneel, and your empire may survive. Resist, and all will perish." Elias did not flinch. He walked calmly to the balcony overlooking the battlefield. His hand rested on his blade, the human steel that had already felled countless enemies. He did not boast, he did not shout. He simply observed, calculating, waiting for the moment to strike. Serenia approached him, her heart pounding. "You don't fear him?" Elias looked at her, steady as ever. "Fear does not win battles. Action does, and I have no intention of failing." The Scar fleet attacked. Massive beams of energy tore across space, striking Zareth ships with devastating force. Explosions shook the command tower. Screams of alien warriors echoed in the communication channels. Yet Elias's strategy unfolded flawlessly. Small ships ambushed enemy vanguards, hidden cannons from asteroids fired upon their flanks, and supply lines were cut. The Scar were forced to fight on uneven ground just as Elias had planned. Even so, the Scar commander was cunning. He brought his personal ship forward, a massive war machine bristling with plasma cannons, and targeted the palace fleet directly. The Zareth ships faltered. Shields flickered. Panic rose in the ranks. "Captain!" a general shouted. "We cannot stop him." Elias's eyes narrowed. "Then we do what humans have done for centuries. We improvise." He issued rapid orders, rerouting smaller ships to harass the enemy, guiding heavy ships to trap points, and drawing the enemy's fire away from the palace. Every move was precise, every decision measured. On the battlefield, the Scar commander noticed Elias directing the fight. He laughed, a cruel and booming sound. "The human. You hide in your little ships while I destroy your empire." Elias's response was calm, almost casual. "I do not hide. I survive. And today, survival is the weapon." Then the commander moved in person, piloting his massive ship into the thick of the battle. He unleashed volleys of plasma so powerful they could pierce through 3 Zareth cruisers at once. Chaos erupted. Entire sections of the fleet were destroyed. Even the alien generals began to doubt whether the human strategies would be enough. But Elias did not hesitate. He analyzed the enemy's movements and found the pattern in the chaos. A weak point emerged. The commander's ship relied on the precision of its shields to protect the flanks. Elias struck, directing small strike teams to overwhelm the shields while drawing attention with decoy ships. The trap worked. The Scar ship became exposed, vulnerable for the first time. Elias did not wait for a weapon to fail or a general to act. He took control of a boarding shuttle, donning minimal armor and carrying only his blade. The shuttle launched toward the massive Scar ship, slipping through a blind spot in the enemy's defenses. Princess Serenia watched from the balcony, her heart in her throat. "He's going alone," she whispered. "He could die." Elias landed on the enemy ship, moving like a shadow through the corridors. Scar soldiers confronted him, but his blade was faster than their attacks. He moved silently, cutting down any who stood in his path. It was not brute strength that carried him, but speed, precision, and the calm calculation of a human mind trained to survive impossible odds. Finally, he reached the inner chamber where the Scar commander waited. The alien turned, massive armor gleaming, energy weapon raised. "Human," the commander snarled. "You cannot defeat me." Elias did not reply. He simply drew his blade fully, the steel reflecting the glow of the chamber. The Scar struck first, powerful, quick, deadly. Elias parried, sidestepped, and countered. Sparks flew as energy clashed with steel, but the human blade found gaps in the armor. Each strike weakened the commander's defenses, each movement precise, calculating, relentless. Serenia could hear the battle even from orbit. She gripped the edge of the balcony, unable to tear her eyes away. "Come on, Elias," she whispered. "You can do this." Minutes passed like hours. Elias dodged blasts, deflected strikes, and slowly wore the commander down. He did not rely on alien weapons, not on brute force, not on luck. He relied on his skill, his training, and his refusal to fail. Finally, he found the opening he needed. With a swift, decisive strike, he pierced the commander's armor. The Scar fell to his knees, defeated. Silence filled the chamber. The human had done what no one believed possible. The Scar fleet, witnessing their commander's fall, faltered. Ships turned, weapons ceased fire, and confusion spread. The Zareth fleet took advantage, pressing the attack and forced the enemy into retreat. Back on the palace balcony, Serenia ran to Elias as he emerged from the shuttle. His uniform was torn, blood from the battle staining him, but his face remained calm, his eyes steady. You did it," she said, breathless. Elias offered a faint smile. "We did it." The nobles and generals came forward, awe and respect in their eyes. The emperor himself approached, bowing slightly. "You have saved our empire, human. And my daughter." Serenia stepped beside Elias, her hand finding his. For the first time, she did not see a quiet, simple human. She saw a warrior, a leader, a hero. The man she had married was no longer just her husband. He was the man who had saved her people. "Captain Elias Ward," the emperor said, "you have proven that courage and wisdom do not belong to any one species. You have shown that humanity is not weak." Elias nodded, looking at Serenia. "And your people are stronger than I imagined. It is an honor to fight beside you." The Scar fleet retreated, humiliated and broken. The Zareth Empire stood victorious. Peace, for now, was secured. Later, in the quiet of the palace gardens, Serenia turned to him. "I believed you were simple," she said softly. "I was wrong." Elias looked at her, his calm eyes meeting her golden ones. "You should never underestimate anyone," he said. "Not a human, not a warrior, not even your husband." For the first time she smiled, truly smiled. She took his hand, gripping it tightly. "Then you shall fight with me always. Not because you are my husband, but because you are the strongest man I know." Elias's smile widened, faint but genuine. Together they stood beneath the stars, the palace glowing behind them, the war behind them, and the future ahead. The empire was safe, the enemy defeated. And a human, once thought simple, had proven that courage, skill, and heart could change the fate of worlds.